Hello and welcome. I expect we'll probably have a couple of other people coming in over the next couple minutes. I just want to thank everybody for coming this evening. My name is Susan O'Handley. I am one of the co-presidents for the Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. We often refer to ourselves as DOAS. So if you hear us say that, or if you see that in print, DOAS stands for Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. Hopefully most of you were able to scroll through some of our announcements and upcoming programs. Everything is on our website, doas.us. One special announcement that I'll just mention this evening is our 2021 optics raffle. We're doing it again as a fundraiser. 2 great pairs of binoculars are prizes, along with a gift certificate for a 3rd prize winner to Wild Birds Unlimited. Proceeds from that sale, there's a limited number of tickets available, 250. We're selling them at $10 a piece. Information on our website. Proceeds are going to support some changes and work that we're doing up at the Audubon Sanctuary and the Franklin Mountain Hawkwatch in Oneonta. So tonight we are doing our Birding for Bald Eagles program as part of the Ice Harvest Festival through Hanford Mills Museum. And I would like to introduce you to Kisa Harley from Hanford Mills Museum to talk to us a little bit about Ice Harvest Festival and what you have going on and what you need people to know about. So over to you, Kisa, sorry.
Great, thank you, Susan. And thank you to DOAS for partnering with us for our virtual Ice Harvest festivities this year. As Susan said, my name is Kisa Harley, and I'm the Education and Curatorial Initiatives Manager at Hanford Mills Museum. We are located in East Meredith, New York, which is about 10 miles east of Oneonta. And Hanford Mills is a historic mill site where we still use a water wheel and steam plant to run sawmill, grist mill, and woodworking machines. Usually we're open between mid-May and mid-October, but in the winter we usually open back up on the first Saturday in February for our annual Ice Harvest Festival. This year, we're not doing an in-person event, but we are excited to offer you some virtual programs and share some activities that you can do at home. And you're already at the first one. In addition to tonight's program, we'll be offering a webinar on the history of ice harvesting in the Northeast and at Hanford Mills. That's taking place on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. On Friday evening, the A.J. Reed Science Discovery Center at SUNY Oneonta is hosting a science trivia night with questions about ice. And then on Saturday, we've got a few things going on. We're going to be premiering 3 videos about ice and harvesting created by Museum Studies graduate students at the Cooperstown Graduate Program. We'll be offering a family program on ice harvesting and how ice houses work at 11 a.m. And then we'll also be sharing some family-friendly activities, including a winter activity guide that we're putting together. And you can find more information about all of these programs on our website, which is hanfordmills.org, as well as on our social media pages. So I hope that you'll join us for some more of our virtual Ice Harvest programming this week. And thanks for joining us tonight. I'm excited to watch the rest of the program.
Thank you so much, Kisa. Just a couple of housekeeping things here. We will be taking questions as we go through the program. So if you have questions, please use the question and answer button. There should be a Q&A function somewhere on your screen, depending on what type of program you're using. If you're on a desktop, I know for mine, it's at the bottom of my screen. Tablets and smart devices, typically you have to tap the screen and that bar will appear and you'll see Q&A. You can type your question right in there and we will ask them kind of as we go along based on questions what's come in. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Andy Mason, who is another of our co-presidents for Delaware-Otsego Audubon Society. For over 35 years on our board, with lots of knowledge and great contributions and things to share with you. So Andy, did you want to share your screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, We
All
got it.
right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Sorry for that snafu. Well, yeah, I'll add my welcome to Susan's to everyone tonight for joining us. And so we're going to talk about a pretty special bird, our national symbol, and a bird that we're very fortunate to have well represented in our area. So what I'm going to do, I don't think I really need to introduce you to bald eagles. Or if you don't know bald eagles, you lose your citizenship. So I hope you do know the bird somewhat. Very majestic, regal bird. They're on our coins. They're on our money. They're the symbol of a nation, and in many other ways, they have a great deal of standing in society. And I think even non-birders know this particular bird. None of the shots that you're going to see tonight were taken by me. I'm not a photographer. They're from different sources. And this particular one was taken on one of our bald eagle trips down to Delaware County. And the photographer there on the bottom got this shot. And this is really one of my all-time favorite bald eagle shots. I've seen a lot of good photos, but I also love sycamore trees. So the combination here I think is stunning. So first, I'm going to talk a little about the life history of bald eagles, some statistics and information about them. They're big birds. They have a 6-foot wingspan, which is about as wide as my arms are if I stand with them outstretched. They're very closely associated with water. They're part of a larger group of eagles worldwide known as sea eagles. And they very often nest near water, feed near water, and perch near water. There are exceptions to that, but they're very water oriented. They build big nests up in good-sized trees. More often than not around here, they're white pines, but I have seen nests in the sycamores and in maple trees on rare occasions. They build a nest and then they repair it each year. The same nest gets bigger and bigger, and they can use it for many years. And what eventually happens is the nest gets so big that the tree or the branch can't hold it anymore and it collapses. Another shot from one of our bald eagle field trips. We do go near a couple of nests, and they're both the nests that we typically stop and get good looks at are both near state highways with cars going practically underneath them. And so they're obviously pretty tolerant of humans. And with a decent lens, you can get good shots. They lay typically 2 eggs each year. And the incubation period is over a month. They start nesting quite early. They're probably involved right now in courtship behavior and nest repair. And it won't be long before eggs are laid. And then the young are in the nest for a long, long time. It takes them quite a while to get to fledgling size. A couple of chicks. Most of these nest photos are from the State Department of Environmental Conservation. They monitored nests for a number of years during the recovery period for bald eagles, and local guy, Scott Van Arsdale, did a lot of the nest climbing up in these big trees and got these photographs. This particular one is from a nest cam in Pennsylvania, and I put this one in there just to show you how much food these birds can provide to their young. You can see the fish around the edge of the nest there. It looks like way too much for those chicks, but they do need a lot of food because they grow fast. Not the most beautiful things at this stage, but you definitely can tell they're eagles. They've got the bills and they've got the big talons already. When they do fledge or leave the nest, They still are dependent on the parents for quite a period. The parents bring them food. They generally stay around the nest. They will go back to the nest, the young ones, and hang out there. And they gradually become more independent, learn to hunt on their own. The adult birds are very mottled, white and brown, mixed through their body. Tom's going to talk a bit more about eagle ID, but you can, with some practice, you can tell approximately how old they are as the plumage changes. It takes 5 years for them to get the white head and white tail that we know so well. They stay as a pair for life, but they will take a new mate if one dies. The females are larger than the males, which is typical of raptors. That's a shot of them engaging in courtship, aerial courtship, which is quite a spectacular sight. I've only seen it a couple of times. They'll lock talons in midair and just tumble towards the ground. Really spectacular. They live a long time, provided nothing happens to them. 30 years is certainly possible. And just a few years ago, a bird was found dead in upstate New York. It was hit by a car, and it had been tagged as a chick in New York State in 1977, and it was 38 years old when it got hit by a car. So that bird was a real survivor. I'd say that's extraordinary for a bird to live that long, and I guess finally its luck ran out. Typically they eat fish. They're very good anglers. They can catch fish, live fish out of the water, but they'll take other prey too. Certainly mammals on occasion. I know woodchucks are one item they'll go after. And they also will scavenge. They're quite happy to get a free meal, feeding on a deer carcass or other roadkill, which is a little dangerous, obviously, but they certainly can catch live food when necessary. But like most wildlife, they're happy to take a free meal too. Here in New York, they were a fairly common bird in earlier years, and around 1950 or so, 1940, 1950, DDT, a pesticide, became prevalent use and entered the environment. It was a very long-lived pesticide, and it built up in the food chain, and it ended up in at the birds at the top of the food chain, such as bald eagle, osprey, brown pelicans, peregrine falcons. And once it was in their body, it was not healthy for them. And with bald eagles and some of the other birds, the particular effect it had was that it made the eggshells thin. And so when the birds went to incubate their eggs, the eggs broke, and obviously nesting was unsuccessful. So at the low point, New York State was down to only one bald eagle nest, and that nest was not producing any young. It was up in the Finger Lakes. It was not producing any young. Again, the eggs broke every year, even though they attempted to breed and incubate. So that was the low point for us. And then in 1976. The state and the Department of Environmental Conservation began a program to restore bald eagles. And they were an endangered species at that point, and certainly in danger of disappearing from the state completely. And so the way it worked was young chicks were taken, eggs and chicks were taken from, I believe eggs primarily were taken from nests in Alaska. The DC biologists had to fly to Alaska, climb eagle nests there, where there was a still good production of bald eagles. DDT had not affected them so much up there. And took one egg out of a nest, brought it back to New York, and they were raised in these cages, elevated cages that they could be fed without seeing the humans that were feeding them, or which prevented them from becoming imprinted on humans. And it was very experimental. Nobody really knew how these birds would react without having actual parents. But they did very well. Their instincts kicked in, and they managed to leave the nest when they were old enough and hunt and feed by themselves. And it was so successful that other states copied this program and also reintroduced bald eagles. And over the years now, there's no need to reintroduce eagles anymore. For sure, the estimate is there are over 400 nesting pairs in the state. So successful is kind of an understatement for this program. This is a graph just showing you how the number of eagle nests and number of young produced per year has risen dramatically since 65 to 2010, and that's 11 years ago, and that graph would be up much higher today. This is another look at how the bald eagle population has changed in the state. New York State has done 2 breeding bird atlas surveys. The first one, it was in 1980. The second, which is that top graph, shows you the location of eagle nests in 1980 to 85. And then the second atlas was done 20 years later. And you can see the distribution and number of bald eagle nests has changed dramatically. And we're presently involved in the third breeding bird atlas, which began in 2020. And I think when this 5-year atlas is done, that map is going to be probably at least double number of nests of 2,000, but certainly more widespread and more numbers. This is a map from I think 2014, showing nests in the state, and you can see there's quite a concentration down in our region, Delaware County, Sullivan County, the Delaware River watershed, and so we have had a lot of success here in this region with bald eagles, and we are lucky, as I mentioned earlier, we're quite lucky to have so many and to have them so visible. We did have a couple of questions, I guess. Are they in the Q&A? Let's just see here.
We do have a couple of people with hands raised, which I am assuming are questions, but there's been nothing typed in. So if those people, Liz and Jacob and Laurel, okay, we've got one that has just come in. You should see a Q&A function in the Zoom meeting bar, just to the right of where it says participants,
okay,
Q&A and polls. And then just click on that. It'll open a new window. You can type your question right in there. So we do have a question from Cindy. Are there data for numbers of nesting pairs before DDT's impact?
What I read historically, around at least 60 or 70 pairs nests had been documented back in the pre-DDT era. So compared to today, that's much fewer. But that may not have been the total number of nests that were present. And there were other things that happened to eagles in addition to DDT. You know, There was a time when they were not protected at all. They were considered competition for fish. They were thought to prey on livestock, sheep, calves, those sort of things, which probably was pretty rare. So they were persecuted in other ways other than DDT. They were shot, killed, and probably other intentional poisonings. So, but that's what I understand. 60 to 70 documented pairs prior to DDT. Let's see. Someone wants to know how to get their audio back on. Let's see.
I have one. Are they territorial?
Territorial.
Yep, they're territorial. How far apart will pairs nest?
Well, that depends on the food supply. I guess up in Alaska, where there was lots of food, lots of good habitat, little disturbance along the coastline, the nests were not far apart at all, as close as a mile or less between nests. In our region, again, depending on food supply, they seem to know how close they can nest and still have enough food and be successful nesting. The closest nests I know to each other, I would say, are probably, well, in Oneonta, there's a nest near Lowe's, and then there's a nest in West Davenport. And those are probably, I guess that distance is probably 2 to 3 miles. So that's pretty close. And those are the two closest nests that I know. But new nests are popping up all the time. Every year I hear of new nests. And so I think the territories are probably not completely full yet. I think we may see them nesting closer together, especially along the larger waterways. Like Cannonsville and Pepacton reservoirs, for example, they're obviously good habitat, and they each have several bald eagle nests on them. Let's see.
Another question. In regards to territory, do you have an idea of how far they kind of fly from their nests? Like, do they have a particular range from the nest as a central location?
Well, again, I think it depends on the food supply. I think during nesting season, you know, when they have to go search out food, I can't say this with authority, but I would think they probably have 5 to 10 mile range to find food. But I would think if they need to, they would go further. You know, that's one reason that they nest on waterways, is because there is fish, there is food, waterfowl also they'll take nearby. So they probably don't, if they're a successful nesting pair, they probably don't need to go great distances to find food. They've already chosen a site that's going to provide them with food nearby.
Okay, and nest composition, anything particular that they make their nests out of? And then there still are a couple more questions.
Well, they're definitely, you know, they're big stick nests, sizable sticks, you know, 1 inch or 2 inches in diameter, and they will just snap the sticks off trees. I'm sure they go for dead sticks, dead branches. But I've seen them carrying some pretty good sized sticks. It's kind of surprising how big they are. And then they do line it with some down. If you saw that nest from Pennsylvania, you could see there was like a lining to it that had you know, that softened it and probably helped keep the young birds warm. So, but they're well constructed. You know, they seem to know how to put them together that they will last for years and years and years. They get so big that sometimes other small birds will nest in the bottom of the nest. There's reports of wrens and birds like that nesting in the bottom of the bald eagle nest. So
here's a question, and I saw a video showing this that somebody had taken recently. Katie asks, or she says, we can watch eagles regularly from our windows at the Cooperstown Graduate Program, same building as the biological field station. Just before the temperature dropped and the lake froze, 2 adults and 3 adolescents were fishing and diving at ducks near the field station docks. Were they going for the ducks or for the fish?
In that case, I know what one bird that hangs out at those ducks in those docks in the winter is coots, and eagles get coots. I've seen eagles get coots in Florida, actually. So that's a.
Oh, your audio and video seems to have frozen, Andy. There you go.
Oh,
You're back.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Is that any better now?
Yep, that is.
Yeah.
Another question, are they still tagging eaglets?
No, I don't believe so. Not in New York State. I think the DEC considers the birds pretty well fully recovered. And so they do monitor them. They do censuses, I believe. And they keep their eye on them for sure. And they're still protected, certainly. But no, I don't think they're doing any climbing and tagging of the birds.
Okay, another question. Can we have too many eagles given habitat loss?
Well, the habitat sort of will determine the number of eagles rather than the other way around. If there isn't enough habitat, most wildlife knows enough not to breed or to limit the numbers if there's not a food supply. One thing that has happened is there is now starting to be territorial battles between eagles. 2 years ago, someone called me about an injured eagle near their home, and I called DEC. They came and got it. The bird was very sick, and went to a vet, and it had a puncture wound, and I thought it had been shot, but it turned out it was a puncture wound from another eagle, and it was probably a battle over territory. So they can hurt each other, and in this case, this bird did die from that wound. So I think the habitat question, the birds themselves will sort that out.
Have you heard of bald eagles building secondary nests, or like nests closer to their, like a secondary location closer to their fishing grounds?
Well, they will sometimes alternate nests. The one nest that we see down in Deposit in Delaware County on our winter eagle trip, that nest, the birds have at least 2 nests that they seem to. I don't know what their schedule is, but one nest, and other years they use another nest. Not quite sure what the reason for that is, but it does happen, and I've heard that in other places that, yeah, they do. I don't think it's got to do with food, because the nests are usually pretty close together, but they, for some reason, they do sometimes alternate nests.
Do families stay together?
Let's see. I see one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just see a question here asking if the families stay together. Yeah, they do. There is the birds. The young birds will come back, hang out for a couple of years, maybe 3 years, around the vicinity of where they were hatched. The parents will not tolerate them interfering with the new birds, but they do seem to stay in an area. And then as they get mature, as they get old enough to breed themselves, they will head out and find their own territories, find their own mate.
Great. There is a question about basically eagles taking small pet animals like cats. Is there truth to that?
Well, I don't know if it's one of those urban myths or not, but supposedly there's a nest in Delaware County. It was there for a number of years and finally blew down out of the tree. And the word was that there were pet collars in that nest. So,
hey, Andy, this is Tom. I just want to say that Scott Van Arsdale told me that the cat collar story is not true.
Is not true. Good. Well, I'm glad I brought up the urban myth possibility with that. Yeah, I would say it is possible that bald eagles could take a cat or a small dog, though. I see no reason why they would not if they had the opportunity.
Yep. I think it's probably much more likely for an owl, like a great horned owl, to do that.
Yeah.
We did answer about what age juveniles leave the nest and how far they went, correct? That was kind of combined in that other answer. So I'm going to switch that to done. I've seen groups of 4 to 6 mixed aged eagles together several times, grouping in a singular tree on Goodyear Lake. Is it likely a family or 2-year clutches? Do last year's eaglets stay with parents, and for how long? So we kind of answered that a little bit.
Yeah. I would guess if you see birds, mixed ages like that, especially, there is a nest there at Goodyear Lake. So yes, that's very likely that they're related, I would say.
Okay. And then we have, how do eagles stay warm in the winter?
Well, their birds are very well adapted for cold weather. It looks like their feathers are not that thick, but the insulation under their outer feathers is down, and it's just great insulation. They have a system for their feet, which are bare, where the blood kind of circulates through, goes back up, gets warm, and comes back down, almost like an antifreeze system. So yeah, they manage, if they can find enough food, the birds can keep warm. Actually, I'd say that the tougher job is for the little birds, the chickadees, the finches, to stay warm through the weather, because they don't have much body mass, but an eagle has got a lot of body there to keep its interior warm.
Okay, and this one is from a youth in our audience named Paxton. Asks, what are the bald eagle's predators?
Well, as I said, they sometimes injure each other. I would say for an adult eagle, I don't really think they have predators other than perhaps humans that might harm them. I think it's possible that chicks may be taken by owls. Great horned owls are known for killing chicks of even large birds in the nest. I think raccoons sometimes will get up in the nests and get the eggs. I don't know if they could handle much of a grown chick. But really, the bald eagles are pretty well near the top of the food chain, so there's not much that's going to go after them.
2 more questions. One is, are there any other known environmental toxins that are currently challenging their well-being?
Yeah, PCBs, which were not a pesticide, but were a widely used chemical in earlier years. They now have been phased out, but they still are persistent in the environment. The Hudson River, the sediments in the Hudson River had a lot of PCBs from a couple of plants that produced them up north of Albany. They've dredged some out, but I doubt they got all of it. So PCBs do still show up in eagles and other wildlife, and one effect that they have is they deform their bills. And so a bird with a deformed bill is obviously not going to be very successful. So that's one. Most of the pesticides in use today are fairly short-lived. They kind of do what they're supposed to do, and then they break down. But there are still some used, especially ones that contain heavy metals like mercury, that are persistent and that could build up in the birds. One issue that's not really a pesticide, but is a real danger to eagles is lead, and I think Tom's going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to his part of the presentation.
Yep. One other question that I think we'll show people maybe after Tom's part is about the map showing, you know, where to go to find some of the nest populations. Did you have that, Andy? As
yeah, that's I have that a little further along.
Okay, so do we switch over? Are you ready to continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So people can continue to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll come back to them after this next segment.
Yeah, so this now we're kind of getting to here a little bit more locally, and this map, as I said, just showed that we have a good concentration of eagle nests in our area in the Delaware River watershed. Maybe my program went to sleep. Okay, so why do we have them here? Why are they so prevalent in our particular part of the country, part of the state? Well, there's good habitat. You know, we have a lot of waterways here, and in particular, we have some large reservoirs, which are prime habitat for bald eagles. The New York City water supply reservoirs in Delaware County, Pepacton, and Cannonsville, the Schoharie Reservoir in Schoharie County, and then down in Sullivan County, there are others, as the Mongolf and the Neversink Reservoir. There's a whole series of reservoirs, and particularly in winter, the water below the reservoir stays open as it passes through the dams. The water is moving, and so it stays open, and the birds really like that. Fish will come through the dams either dead or stunned, so that's pretty easy pickings for the eagles below the reservoir. So when we go out on our eagle trips, that's kind of where we concentrate the areas below the reservoir dams and the stretches of the river below that. And there's a lot of good places like that here. So that's for wintering eagles. And in the winter, we have not only the local birds, but we also have a lot of birds that come down from the north as the water freezes up, looking for open water. And so we get a concentration of sometimes in the hundreds of bald eagles in the Catskills and along the Delaware River. There's a lot of protected land. The Catskill Park is pretty well undeveloped, which is obviously good for the birds. So we kind of have what the eagles need here, fortunately, and so we do get to see them and enjoy them. Yeah, as I said, there's quite a wintering population. And I would say that actually most of the birds that are seen around the reservoirs on our trip and by others who go out exploring for eagles, most of the birds in this time of year, midwinter, probably are not local birds. They're probably from, you know, New England, the maritime provinces, maybe Quebec, and they have moved south to find open water and to find food. So that's why we have so many in the winter and why they're so concentrated in these areas. Yeah, and it is important to them to have this ability. There have been a few years when on our field trip that even the rivers have been frozen when we've had an extremely cold winter. And so in those years, the eagles leave the Delaware watershed, and they actually go over to the Hudson, a lot of them. The lower Hudson does not freeze because it's brackish water, it's tidal, and so it stays open and there's food there. So that there can be really, really big numbers there in the winter also. Yeah, it's quite an attraction these days. The bald eagles, people love them for good reason. Our trip is very popular. We've had as many as, I'd say 50, 60 people come along at times. This year we had to cancel the trip. We didn't do it because of the COVID concerns. And that's the first time in, I think 30, 35 years that we haven't done this trip. It's always been very good, and we've always found eagles. We've never been shut out. Yeah, someone asked about the cold affecting the birds. It really doesn't. They're pretty well prepared for it. They've got quite a coat of feathers there, a layer of fat under their skin, and again, if they have food, they'll do all right, and they seem to do pretty well at finding food. Yeah, these wintering birds that come down from the north, once the local birds start thinking about nesting and their hormones are driving them to be territorial, there can be disputes between the local birds and the visitors from the north, and we do sometimes see that on our field trip. We'll see these little scraps. They usually don't hurt each other. At this time, the birds from the north seem to know that they better not mess with the local birds because they're pretty serious about their nests and their nest sites. So they start gathering materials, nest materials. As I said, we've seen that on our trip even in late January. Rebuilding the nests, and so that's an early activity, an early breeding activity, and so I'll just go on to where we do go to find them. They do congregate around the open water, so if there is open water, you always have a chance of finding eagles. The rivers now are starting to get frozen over. I noticed the Susquehanna the other day, quite a bit of ice on it, not frozen over completely, but with these cold snaps we're having, open water is getting more and more scarce. This is a diagram of the reservoirs. Papact and Cannonsville, the two big ones on the east and west branch of the Delaware. The Schoharie Reservoir on the Schoharie Creek, Ashokan, which is down towards Kingston. If you go down Route 28 towards Kingston, you go along the Ashokan Reservoir. That's another very good spot for seeing eagles. It's a really big reservoir, and it doesn't always freeze over. So there are birds that can feed there year-round. And then down in Sullivan County, there are a couple of reservoirs where DEC has viewing opportunities. They built some blinds where people can go and watch the birds from inside with photograph through openings in the blinds, and so that's pretty neat too. We used to go down there on our eagle trip actually before the numbers of birds built up in the Delaware reservoirs, but now we don't need to go that far. But that's another good location. This is a scene from our eagle trip. This is folks looking up at one of those nests that is right near Route 10 and Deposit. So this is one of our favorite stops the birds are often either on the nest or near the nest, and we got real good looks at them, and they just look back at us. They're completely undisturbed, very adapted to humans here. So since we couldn't do our eagle trip this winter, we made up a map with a guide to the route that we usually take. So if anybody's interested in going off and looking for eagles yourselves, you can download this map from the DOAS website. And also, there's a guide that all these stops along the way just tells you where they are and gives you a little description of what's there and what to look for. And you'll see there's quite a cluster down there by Deposit around the Cannonsville, and that is definitely the hot spot for us on our trip. We see lots of eagles below the Cannonsville Dam, and then down the river for the next mile or two below the dam. And then we go down Route 17 and come back up the east branch of the Delaware on Route 30 to Downsville. And that stretch of Route 30 from Route 17 up to Downsville is also quite productive. It's a narrow road, a narrow valley. You're driving right alongside the river most of the way. And sometimes the eagles are just right there at eye level. Very easy to see. We always encourage people to stay in their cars when they see eagles. The eagles are a lot more tolerant when you're in your car. The exceptions would be the
Oh, you hit a little bit of lag there, Andy.
I lost Andy's audio.
Yep. Andy, if you don't mind, if I take over, is this your last slide?
I think there's one or two more.
Okay.
Right.
Because I'll show people how to get to this information on the website as soon as you're done.
Okay.
And then we'll switch over to Tom.
Okay, good. Yeah, this is just a little bit of the written description that goes with that map. So this is a photo by Rod Sutton, one of our Audubon board members, on one of the eagle trips down at Cannonsville. Another very nice photo. There are a lot of, if you're a photographer, a lot of good photo opportunities with eagles. They sit still, and with a good lens, you can get some good shots. So other places to see eagles other than the Delaware County area. If you're up near Albany, Cohoes Falls, which is on the Hudson. Actually, I think it's right where the Mohawk comes into the Hudson, near Albany. Below Albany, the Hudson River stays open mostly, and from the boat launch sites, you have a good chance of seeing eagles along the river. And then the lower Hudson that I mentioned, Harriman State Park, Croton-on-Hudson, that area always has a lot of eagles in the winter. One cool thing there is you'll sometimes see eagles sitting on ice floes and just floating down the river on the ice floes. The St. Lawrence River is another good location. It stays open all year. And up around Syracuse, Onondaga Lake, and Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge also have good eagle viewing opportunities. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our own Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch, which is outside Oneonta. We average in the fall, we count eagles and hawks during migration, and we average over 100 bald eagles over the course of the fall. This photo was actually taken at Franklin Mountain by a 12-year-old girl, Courtney Moore. It's another one of the best eagle shots I've seen. This is our tally board where we add up the birds each day as we count them. So if you do go out looking for eagles, these are some etiquette rules. They're all pretty common sense to avoid disturbing the birds unnecessarily. And these are on the DEC website, and they're also on our website with that map. And so that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Andy. And we'll see if we have some other questions kind of as we go through. I just want to very quickly show everybody. Is my screen sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see the DOAS website on there?
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, the border didn't show. So basically, if you go to doas.us, right on our homepage, you're going to see under important announcements, self-guided Eagle trip. When you click that link, it's going to take you to a page with detail about this. There's a PDF file that you can download for printing. There is the written description, which is what's contained in that PDF file about each stop, and it will take you point by point through each of those. Somebody had asked, how can we be good neighbors to our local bald eagle populations? So take a look through this eagle viewing etiquette. And then at the bottom of the page is the map. Basically, it is a Google map that is shared. And if you want to open this on your phone, you can just click to expand it to large size, and it's going to open up full screen with the menu on your left. And you'll see each of the different stopping points are detailed on here, point 1, point 2, and it follows along with the trip routes. So Andy, thank you so much for putting this together for this map, because I think it's just a really useful, helpful tool. We did have a couple of people who've used it already as a practice session and gone through the tour and had remarkable success with it. So well done, and thank you for that effort. I know the question comes up so very often between the questions with identification, juvenile bald eagles versus golden eagles. There's always that confusion. So we have Tom Sallow with us this evening, also a very longtime board member for Delaware-Otsego Audubon. Tom is going to overview both some of those identification pieces as well as some of those conservation efforts and what are the threats to our eagle populations currently. So over to you, Tom. You can go ahead and share your screen. And don't forget to unmute.
Yeah, I should be unmuted. Okay, go away. I want this, I got a bar up here at the top of my screen that won't go away.
Okay. Well, you're on your presentation now, so you can go
Yeah,
ahead.
right. I couldn't get to the slideshow function.
Okay.
Okay, I'm there now, and I'm not at the beginning of my slideshow. There we are. Okay, and I still have a bar. Are you seeing a bar across the top that's cutting out part of my title on this slide?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so only I'm seeing it. All right, so a question came up that Susan didn't ask because I told her I was going to address it. And the question was, could somebody have seen a golden eagle locally? And the answer is absolutely. There are golden eagles here all winter long. And it's going to sound kind of strange, but there are a lot more golden eagles than people think, but they're a lot harder to see than people think. So one of the most common confusions in bird species that we hear about, that we see, that we address, are people confusing juvenile bald eagles with golden eagles, believing juvenile bald eagles are golden eagles. Golden eagles are here in much lower numbers. They're probably like 5% of the eagles that are in our region through the winter. But they're probably 1% or less of the eagles that are actually seen, because bald eagles are frequently tolerant of people. They're sitting around waterways. They sit in trees near roads. They're generally pretty easy to see. Where golden eagles in the wintertime are really upland forest country birds, and they're very hard to find. The reason we know that there are a reasonable number of golden eagles around here is because we did 11 years of camera trapping where we put out bait for eagles. And virtually every site in Delaware and Otsego County at some point turned up a golden eagle, and some of them turned up a lot. But when we did surveys in Delaware County in 2 winters, we surveyed Delaware County. We put hundreds of hours in, team hours. And each year we found 2 eagles, and we would find 50 or so bald eagles. And this was working very hard and looking for them. So they're very hard to find. And a couple of the eagles we found in those surveys were near our camera traps. They were near bait. So yes, there are golden eagles here. And yes, frequently people misidentify bald eagles. So these eagles here, these pictures were taken in late December near Delhi. And this is an adult bald eagle, which is obvious from the white head and the white tail. And it is a young golden eagle. It is a golden eagle that's probably about 3 years old. It's probably, you would still call it a juvenile. You wouldn't call it a subadult yet. But I put these birds, which were together and interacting in the same, I'm using them because I want to point out some things you can use to tell the difference between these birds. Golden eagles have really small heads compared to a bald eagle, and they have really small beaks compared to a bald eagle. So a golden eagle has head size proportionally like a red-tailed hawk. All these sea eagles that Andy mentioned that bald eagles were part of a group of have huge heads and huge beaks. So if you look at the head size, that's key. If you come over to this slide over here, golden eagles have longer tails, or it appears longer because the head's so short. So if you compare head size to tail size, a golden eagle's head is less than half the length of its tail, whereas a bald eagle's head will be equal to the length of its tail. Another thing that you can use is how they soar. Most of the time when I'm teaching people to identify eagles, I'm teaching them how to identify eagles at a hawk watch. We're looking at flying birds. And bald eagles, when they are soaring or gliding, they hold their wings flat. You can't see that very well here, but it'll be just like a straight line. Whereas a golden eagle, if it's soaring or gliding, will hold its wings slightly higher than its body. It's called a dihedral, and it's commonly seen in turkey vultures and northern harriers. So since we're talking about identifying eagles that hopefully you're going to be seeing out on your road trips, I'm going to give you some more detail. And I talked about camera traps. And these are 2 golden eagles at a camera trap in the Taconic Mountains. And they're both adults. And you can see they have this golden nape in the top of their head. And this is very evident in good light. Sometimes if you're looking at these birds in the sky, you will not see it. You'll see a silhouette. But if you see these birds in a tree, which does happen, you might see them out on the ice on the reservoirs feeding on a deer, even though they're not attracted to water. But if you can see them in good light, you'll see the nape on the neck. The adults also, these upper wing coverts, the feathers that cover the upper wing, become bleached out. New ones will molt in and they'll be dark, but they bleach out, and you won't see this on young birds and you won't see this on young bald eagles. But on golden eagles, this is very common. And if they're in the sky, like at Franklin Mountain, we call this a tawny bar because it runs the whole length of the back of the wing. So these are adults. The only white the adults have on them, besides these bleached areas, is you'll see maybe some downy feathers sticking through, maybe a little bit under the tail, but there's really no, white on these birds. Now this is a mess of bald eagles, and I wish I could make this bar that's blocking part of my screen go away because I can't read all my text here. But this is another camera trapping site. I hope nobody's squeamish about roadkill deer. But I had all these different aged eagles that I wanted to show in one picture. Full adult here. This is the first winter bird. This bird was hatched the previous year. It has no white on its back. If it was in a tree, you wouldn't see any white on its chest. It will have some white underneath its wings in the wing pits. This is a third winter bird. These birds get more and more white on them as they get older. And these are transitional birds. These are two birds that'll be complete adults within the year. Another adult in the background. At this site, we got 25 to 27 eagles at a time. So these congregations of eagles, you know, will find a food source and they will feed together. This bird here is a third winter bird, and like I said, this is a first winter bird, and these are the birds that most commonly get mistaken for golden eagles. These are juvenile golden eagles. The one on the left is a first winter bird. It has its upper wing coverts have not bleached out yet. It has an extreme amount of white in its tail. This bird is slightly older, but this bird shows white they have in their flight feathers of the wings. They don't have any white in the wing linings. They don't have any white except for an occasional feather or two like that. They don't have white in their belly. They have white at the juveniles have white at the base of the tail and white in the wing pits, whereas the adults have no white at all. They all have these golden nates. This is a bird that we trapped in Delaware County, and I just wanted to use this to, to show you in the flight feathers, we have white on the golden eagle and just an oddball feather here and there that you would not see at 50 yards. So this is a juvenile bald eagle. Now, this is not a first-year bird. This bird is maybe over a year old, maybe 3 years old. You can see it has some white in its flight feathers, and it has white in its wing pits and the underwing coverts. These birds, as they get older, they can have white just about anywhere until they turn to adults. Then it will be just in the head and the tails. So this is a quiz, and I guess there's a whole bunch of people on here. So I guess you get to answer this for yourself. So take a minute and study this bird from what I just told you about the plumage of these birds, where you would find white on them, where you wouldn't, where you would find bleaching in the upper wings, and the size of the head and beak. And there's one thing I forgot to mention. Golden eagles have feathers all the way down to their toes, and bald eagles don't. So that kind of gives this away. So that's kind of the, rounding up the difference between these eagles. So I guess before I talk about conservation issues, does anybody have any questions? We'll go back to these adult golden eagles.
The only one that's outstanding on the question is from Jennifer. When the Hudson freezes in the Coast Guard and Saugerties breaks it for large boats, and about would eagles congregate along the water to fish if they needed to?
Well, bald eagles definitely in the winter are associated with open water. During some severe winters, we have had a camera trap here when everything is frozen and we still have lots of eagles. So if they have a food source, if they have a regular food source, they will hang around. But generally when things really freeze hard like they did, I think it was in 2015 maybe, the birds all move south towards open water. So yes, for keeping the water open does attract eagles. So I see some more questions come up here, Susan.
Yes, we do have a couple of them. One of them is, how far do golden eagles wander in their hunting forays? We definitely have some data there.
The golden eagles that we have tracked vary a great deal. They tend to have like a core range that is very small, a few square miles. but we've had a few birds that in the middle of the winter will sometimes just go 50, 60 miles and hang out somewhere else for a week. We have a bird that we're tracking right now, that one of the two birds whose tracking devices are still working, and her name's Marie, and she hangs out, I could show you on that map of Andy's where he was showing the whole Catskills. She hangs out by Round Out Reservoir. But it seems like every winter for the last 5 years, she just gets up and goes down to Pennsylvania and hangs out in the Pennsylvania game lands for a week or two. And then she comes back up to the Round Out Reservoir. So we had another bird did the same thing. It was hanging out down by the Cannonsville, and it decided to go up to Cortland for a couple of days. So yeah, so they will wander around. Usually if they have a good food source, they stick tight. So next question.
One more question on types of eagles in terms of mating. Do they crossbreed at all?
No, they're actually, golden eagles are more closely related to red-tailed hawks than they are to bald eagles. So golden eagles are two different. They're not closely related at all.
Another question about their eggs. Is there significant difference in how their eggs look?
I can't answer that. I would need to refer to some reference materials.
Yeah, I have a resource here. I might be able to look that up and find out. And then what about their nests? Like Andy talked a little bit about the bald eagle nests. Can you talk a little bit about golden eagle nests?
Golden eagles prefer to nest on cliffs. They nest a lot in mountains, but they do nest in trees, and they do build stick nests in trees. So in the Adirondacks, there was nesting golden eagles up until the 1960s, maybe the very early 1970s, and those birds were nesting in trees.
That looks to be it. I'm going to do a little bit of research on the eggs piece, so you can proceed from there.
Okay, I'll zip down to my conservation slide, which, before I talk about conservation, I was asked to discuss some of our efforts. And Andy mentioned the Franklin Mountain Hawk Watch, which we've operated since 1989. And up until this year, I believe every year up until 2020, we had more golden eagles than bald eagles. And this year we had many more bald eagles than golden eagles. It is known as the best place to see golden eagles this side of southern Pennsylvania. There's no place, anywhere, in New York where you can see golden eagles like you can at Franklin Mountain in the fall. We've done spring migration surveys, and we still do some casual migration counting at Davis State Park in the spring. As I mentioned, we did 11 years of camera trapping, and I also ran a project for the whole state, and I have an archive of over 1 million camera trapping photos, many of which are eagles. We trapped 8 golden eagles in Otsego and Delaware County, and we put GPS tracking devices on them. And that started in 2014. 2 of those devices are still working. As I mentioned, Marie is in the Eastern Catskills right now. She checked in this morning. She's still hanging out right near Round Out Reservoir on some state land. And our other bird, Sisu, spent the winter, she was trapped in the following winter in the Catskills, and she spent the last 3 winters in the Adirondacks. So she's actually wintering further north as she gets older. We have conducted raptor surveys for 3 different wind projects, and including 340 hours that we surveyed for the Bluestone project near Deposit. Looks like that project is going to get built. It's a major concern of ours. We think it's among the worst places in New York to build a wind project as far as impacting eagles. So that's been some of our activities. And I'm trying to get the slide to move along. As far as our conservation efforts, we do a lot of public education, and you're experiencing some of that tonight. We have been doing a lot of education to try and convince hunters to change to non-toxic ammunition. We've been lobbying for the use of non-toxic ammunition, and we have started putting tracking devices on rehabilitated lead-poisoned eagles. What people don't realize is that every deer that's shot with a rifle in New York State, the bullets fragment, sometimes into hundreds of pieces, and those little tiny pieces are enough to kill an eagle, or at least to make it sick so it might starve to death. And when a deer hunter field dresses a deer, when he leaves the internal organs in the woods, those internal organs are filled with these little pieces of toxic lead. So this is a lead-poisoned bald eagle found near Cannonsville Reservoir. This is not uncommon. In New York State, about 150,000 deer are killed with rifles each year, and we have more and more eagles, so more and more eagles are getting lead poisoning. So trying to reduce lead poisoning in eagles has been one of our priorities for, going on 10 years now. We've been monitoring wind projects in high eagle use area. Changes to how the state reviews these projects has made it more difficult for us to have any impact on those wind projects. But we have done a lot of surveying, and we testified in the project down in Hanford. So that's my roundup of conservation efforts. So I guess if people want to know more about that, I'm willing to take questions.
I do have an answer for the egg question. I have a resource called the Birder's Handbook, which gives you all sorts of information on eggs and nests and quantities and breeding seasons, etc. Golden eagle eggs, they lay approximately 2 to 3 eggs per nest. They are white or cream buff in color, and they're often marked with brown, approximately 2.9 inches in size. In comparison, bald eagles lay 1 to 3 eggs per nest. Their color is bluish white for the eggs. They're often what they call nest stained. I'm not sure what that means other than just with debris and matter from the nest, and about 3 inches in size. So that's
I want to jump in here with something that just occurred to me. I have heard from a number of people that they saw a big all dark eagle, and it must have been a golden eagle because it was so big. And the size of an eagle means nothing in terms of what species it is. These birds, they have virtually the same size range. There is a really large sexual dimorphism. Some of the males can be very small. Some of the females can be very big. And the largest birds are the hatchier birds, are the new birds. When a bird comes out of the nest, its flight feathers are about 2 inches longer than an adult's flight feathers. So it's got about a 4-inch wider wingspan and a 2-inch longer tail. So the bird you see in the sky that looks absolutely huge, it's not older, it's not one species or another. It's, the young birds have longer feathers, and if you see them the second year, you'll see their wing feathers are different lengths. The ones that are coming in that are new aren't as long as the feathers from the previous year. The other thing I wanted to mention is I did say that golden eagles were not attracted to water, but there's been a lot of misidentification of dark eagles around water bodies. And this kind of was brought to our attention the summer before last. There was a tour guide on the tour boat on Otsego Lake, and we never addressed this with the tour company, but the tour guide was telling all the the tourists that those dark eagles that they were seeing perched in the trees around the lake were all golden eagles, and the ones with the white heads and tails were all bald eagles. So that's absolutely not true. I've never seen a golden eagle perched along a river or lake, but they are frequently misidentified because that's where people see them. So,
Tom, we have a question in regards to wind towers and the height of the towers. So does the height of a tower play a factor in the risk to birds?
Well, when we see birds flying efficiently, they're using lift from winds hitting a ridge provide uplift. And those birds typically fly about 200 feet in the air when they're either moving efficiently, trying to find food, searching for food, or if they're migrating. So the height of all these wind turbines are right in that real sweet spot that eagles use to migrate. Some of these turbines are actually so high that they're way over where most of these birds are flying. But yeah, so the problem with the tall towers is not just that they're in the path of the eagle, but that they take up a huge area. So if you think about an eagle trying to get down a ridge, the more of that area that is a danger zone because of the length of the turbine blades, the more dangerous it is for the eagle. So there is a relationship there.
And one more question in regards to the eyesight of eagles.
Okay, I have heard, and I don't know how this is determined, that an eagle can see as well as a person with 8-tower binoculars. That being said, we had a banding blind at Franklin Mountain, right above the Hawk Watch, for a number of years. And back in the 1990s, I was sitting there with Ron Milliken, and there was somebody up in the blind with pigeons using his bait. And the pigeons were all covered in a leather corset, so the raptors wouldn't hurt them. But the eagle was across the valley. The eagle was at least 3 miles away, and it saw that pigeon, and it made a beeline for that pigeon, and it sat there over the blind, and there were several Cobleskill students in the blind, and it was hovering over the blind for about 20 seconds, and then it just left. And we don't know what changed its mind. We think maybe the students were talking and it heard them. But that eagle saw that pigeon from about 3 miles away.
Okay. Anything else that Andy or Tom that you would like to add for this evening?
Well, I would say to people, if to get out and look for eagles. This is probably the best time of year to do it. And if you follow that map that we put out there, or even a portion of it, the lower portion of it, I would go so far as to guarantee that you'll see more than one eagle.
Excellent. And don't forget to take a look through the DOAS website for information on upcoming activities and things we have going on, and some conservation news. And also go on over and visit hanfordmills.org and take a look at all of the things that are coming up with Ice Harvest Festival. Kisa, do you have anything final that you would like to add?
No, thank you very much. This was a great program.
Yay, I'm so glad. We did top out a little over 70 participants and attendees, so great audience tonight. We thank you all for coming and staying with us this evening, and we'll have a video recording of this available on our website within the next couple of days, and you can feel free to share and take a look through some of our resources.